Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be a new type of video than what we're used to. We're going to be talking about cursed ship images. Now, what is a cursed ship image? Well, by the standard internet definition, a cursed image is just something that's hard to look at. So a cursed ship image is going to be somewhat of the same. When we do these videos, we're constantly in the archives looking through dozens and dozens of photos, and every once in a while you come across something that's just looks a bit off. So today we're going to do a new type of video. I hope you guys like it. Let us know down in the comments if this is something you'd like us to continue, but we're going to look at 5 different ships that may or may not be cursed. All right, so let's get right into our first ship. First image right out of the box. Yeah, that's certainly hard to look at. So for a little bit of context, this is Royal Navy M1 class submarine. I believe this is actually M1 itself when I pulled the image. This is a 12-inch gun equipped submarine. These were developed right sort of at the end of World War I, right before a lot of the naval treaties and everything limited this style of submarine, or what gun you can put on a submarine. Yeah, this is a gigantic that's bolted onto this submarine. There's no way around this. That just looks very lewd. And it's only made worse and backed up by the fact that the doctrine of this was to literally surface behind an enemy warship at point blank range and shoot a 12-inch projectile through an enemy ship's stern where it was least likely to be armored. Yeah, and if you don't believe me that this is a cursed image, I mean, they only made a handful of them, and most of them were scrapped, converted to other types of submarine, and one even sank. So definitely cursed. You're gonna see that in this series, a lot of ships that make this list are actually special purpose ships. If you don't know what a special purpose ship is, you can click the link up there and go listen to Rick tell you what it is. All right, so let's move on to the next one, shall we? All right, so this is a personal favorite of mine. This is Project 1058.1. We also did a video on this a long time ago. I wrote an article for Naval History magazine about the history of this ship. This is another example of just ridiculous over-specialization. We're trying to be way too many things here at one time. You have a ship that's longer than a Lexington-class battlecruiser, 6 shafts, as much horsepower as a nuclear aircraft carrier. It doesn't, Nimitz, I believe, is 330 plus 1,000 shaft horsepower, something comparable. 12 16-inch 45 guns, and a flight deck mounted amidships. This is just I don't know what to make of this. And again, the conclusion that I drew when I did my video and my article was that, if this thing had been built, it wouldn't have been good at very much anything. It wouldn't have performed the battleship role all that well. And by 1942, the aircraft that we had in service wouldn't have been able to fit or take off or be recovered from this tiny flight deck. So cursed, yeah, very much so. And I think that just goes for the entire Soviet shipbuilding program when it comes to battleships, and actually a lot of other things too. So, all right, the next ship. Speaking of planes that don't belong on warships, this is USS Pringle. That would be DD-477, I believe. This is a part of a 3-ship class where some genius at Bew Ships decided that they wanted to put scout planes on destroyers, because destroyers, weren't good enough as scouts. The cruisers apparently weren't doing a good job, and apparently carriers weren't doing a good job either. So you know what? Let's take the best general purpose warship that the US Navy had at the time, the Fletcher class, and let's ruin it by putting a catapult on it. And in order to do this, you have to cut out, I mean, we're missing several anti-aircraft mounts, we're missing the second torpedo launcher, and we're missing one out of the 5-inch 38 mounts. So you're crippling the ship, not only physically, because you have this catapult on the stern and you're moving weight high, but you're physically removing offensive armament. So again, you're taking a extremely well thought out general purpose warship and turning it into this special purpose nightmare. And to prove that it's cursed, I mean, they converted 3, two or three of them managed to, or some of them managed to actually recover some aircraft in testing. But put it this way, all of them were converted back to regular Fletcher class destroyers. So this whole program was canceled, and at least some of them, all of them, all 3, were returned to the actual main design Fletchers. Unfortunately, Pringle, I believe, was lost actually in action. So, cursed, maybe not. But this is definitely an example where you can take a general purpose warship, convert it to a special purpose warship, and absolutely ruin it. Okay, next ship on our list. This is HMS Blake, I believe, which is a Tiger class ship. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. So first off, the first thing that I want to point to is the 6-inch gun mount forward, and then the ginormous helicopter tumor hangar that's sitting on the stern. Now, this might look like your average sort of Cold War ASW light cruiser, but they didn't really start out that way. And one of my biggest issues with this ship is sort of how they came to be. So we know that at the end of World War II, almost towards the end, and then the few years after, the US Navy and the Royal Navy were developing sort of super light cruisers that would mount automatic 6-inch guns, brand new twin mount, fully powered, dual purpose 6-inch mounts. The cruiser class that would eventually become the Worcester in the US Navy, and then you had the class that would eventually become the Minotaur class for the Royal Navy. With the end of World War II though, they were all canceled. In the case of the US Navy, we got 2 Worcester class ships, Worcester and Roanoke. But then the Royal Navy didn't get any of their own Minotaurs. So the Royal Navy ended up having a few of these Minotaur class turrets and the gun assemblies in stock, so to speak. So because we're strapped for cash, we need to make a cruiser that now carries 2 of these guns versus the 5 turrets that the Minotaurs were supposed to have. So even out of the shipyard, these ships were just a hollow shell of what they were supposed to be. You have a full-size light cruiser that has 4 6-inch barrels. Yikes. It's kind of a fitting metaphor for Britain post-war, don't you think? It's sort of a hollow shell of what it used to be. Sorry for our British friends there. That's just, man, it's unfortunate to look at. Speaking of ships that only have 2 6-inch barrels, is the Zumwalt class. You thought that I was only capable of making fun of Royal Navy and Russian ships? Oh no. This is quite possibly one of the worst warships the US Navy has ever conceived and then eventually built. And that also takes into consideration that the LCS program existed. I cannot say enough how awful these ships are. I mean, these were supposed to be the grand replacement for the Arleigh Burkes after their 30-year period. this is a example of what happens when, you design a ship by committee. Politicians get their hands involved. I mean, this thing bounced through the Bush administration. Well, I think it was started under the Clinton administration, then to Bush, then Obama. These things were like $8 billion at a time when a carrier was $13 billion. So to think that for the price of these two, but then, technically 3 Zumwalt class ships, you could have a whole nother aircraft carrier and then something else on top of that. And to think that these ships will never do anything. I think in our cruiser episode, I mentioned that, or one of the episodes, I think I mentioned that these ships would never see combat. And people got all upset. And it's like, no, they will never see combat. It's a 2-class ship. I know there's 3, but the 3rd has already been relegated to the parts bin. So it's really a 2 active ship class. And it's cursed. You had 2 brand new automatic 6-inch guns, kind of like the Tiger class we just talked about, never got ammo. Even our US government said that $1 million a shell was too expensive, too rich for our taste. Can you believe that? And the guns were actually removed not too long ago. Let's just continue. The ridiculous superstructure. It's just the tumble home hull design. Really? This is something that we don't do anymore. And suddenly these ships needed that. But even how ridiculous, polishing the hull during construction. This is an embarrassment to the US Navy. And I'm glad this program was canceled. They originally ordered, 30 plus of these, and we barely got 3, which is good because the Arleigh Burkes have proven to be a much better platform. This is an expensive joke and an absolute travesty, and an example of why the Surface Navy needs to get its freaking shit together if we're ever going to be in a conflict. Well, rant aside, I hope you enjoyed our little tour through a few cursed ship images today. If this is something that you like, I'll continue to pull images from the archives as I see them. Or if you have any ideas of cursed ships yourself, leave them in the comments below and maybe we'll get to it. All right, well, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.